How can you inculcate a culture that's actually enabled this aspect of transformation?
You need to listen to the feedback around you. You need to look at the patterns that are happening and know that you're a big part of the problem and the solution. So reculturing is really an awareness that we've grown to this level, but we need to scale, we need to accelerate, we need to self-disrupt, otherwise we'll be disrupted.
The aspect of seasons.
Yes.
And knowing when is your season, maybe for your business transition, for you to transition in terms of your career.
It's complex. It's very complex, but I feel what's the priority in this season? And the priority in this season, in the next season, it won't have the same value.
Good evening and welcome to the Late Night Business. My name is Ian Dennis, and tonight, as always, we have a very interesting show lined up because the guest I'm about to have a conversation with was literally seated where I am seated a few years back, but on a different particular show, on a different particular program. And we're going to be finding out more about her journey into the entrepreneurship world. But before I get to introduce my guest, I'd like to remind you that on April 25th, you're having a physical masterclass. I'll be hosting Michael Joseph at the Nairobi Cinema. It's actually confirmed. You can get your tickets on madfund.com and come have this particular literally experience, a business experience, and get to learn from the founding CEO of Safaricom. As always, we're coming to you from the Capital Club, the place you need to be as an entrepreneur. The interesting thing about the Capital Club is that you have so many different amenities under one roof. Where we are is a meeting room. There's a gym right here. What's it called? You can host your guest here. You can do your meetings here. Everything actually can be done at the Capital Club. The guest I'm speaking about, and primarily one had actually just alluded to earlier on, is none other than Faith Muturi, who's actually, from her description, she's a communicator for transformation. That has to be very, very precise. She's also the MD of Delve Training Institute. She's an executive coach. She's a trainer. She's a moderator. She's an MC. She's a musician. She's so many things. Faith, karibu sana.
Asante.
I can see you living by your name as it says in the Bible. Faith without actions. You're exercising so many things. My goodness, quite a pleasure to meet you.
In different seasons. I remember last week, was it last week or the other week? It was a forum of executive coaches, and there's music that played. And I was like, I know that song. It was one of my songs. I've not had it in like 7 years. So seasons.
We call it just
seasons. But yeah, but that was when I was on TV, and because I was doing a music show, I just had a few favors. But it was nothing part of my identity.
Interesting.
It was just a hobby, to be honest. A hobby that adds value to people.
That's very beautiful. The first question before we get into the conversation, what exactly are you most grateful for today?
I'm grateful to be on this side.
We were speaking about this earlier on.
Yeah. Seasons of life. So definitely I was hosting a show and I was juggling that and still consultancy. Yeah. So I decided to let go of one. But I knew that not being a TV host will also allow me to be on this other side. And that's fine. So I enjoyed one season, and this is this season. And you never know. You never know. In 10 years later, I may be on that side. You never know. But yeah, so I'm just grateful for seasons of life. I'm grateful for seasons of life, and that in each season, it can be as fulfilling.
Interesting.
It's as fulfilling being on this side as it was on that side. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it is. Yes, I'm like, I think we were just discussing it off camera on prior. But it's very, very interesting. Even I was just giving out your introduction. You've done so many different things. And maybe just to kick off this particular conversation, where's the genesis of this? Let's turn to the genesis.
Okay.
Why did you discover that this is what exactly you wanted to do, or maybe you're gifted at communication?
Okay. Oh wow, communication is way back. I used to be a Sunday school teacher. In high school. In high school, over the holidays, I teach Sunday school. So I think that's part of where my passion for communication came from. And it makes me very passionate about everyone can make a difference wherever they are. But I transitioned and continued, and professionally, I started off in the development world in behavior change space way back. You remember HIV/AIDS?
Yes.
And the realization was the only intervention is behavior change. So we came up with different interventions, different programs. That time it was under Wild Relief, and the programs were very successful. So a lot of what we did was replicated in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, etc. Because it was successful. So I think that was the foundation, and I think that's where my passion for psychology really was birthed. Psychology, human behavior, and then I think realizing that transformation is individual, transformation is understanding mindset, understanding behavior, and also appreciating that it's not just about an individual. So when we work with different institutions, different societies, you'd find there's significant progress in one, and in another is not as significant, though there'd be improvements. So I'm curious, how come some places just experience extraordinary progress, extraordinary transformation, some issues that cut across even counties that are next to each other, their issues can be worlds apart. And that's when the passion for culture came up, of realizing so individuals as their journey and the power transform, the possibility of also of institutions, but also of culture. And same thing, families. One family can be completely different from another family, but it's the culture that was formed in there. So I think that's how slowly my passion for individuals, teams, organizations evolved. So the behavior change programs we did were so successful, and we were asked, would you apply these same principles in another setting?
So primarily you're doing these particular programs for individuals who have been affected by it? Or how
Good
break it down for me.
Yeah, good question. So again, it was an ecosystem. So there was individuals who probably would come to get support, but mostly it was prevention. Because what was happening then is, how do we help people? Because intervention, there's a place for it, but how sustainable is it? So the government and whether it's CDC, different global organizations are looking at what are preventative measures that's sustainable, so that we're not just reactive, we are proactive. And that's where the solutions of behavior change came up.
Interesting.
So that's them. But I think the beauty is the principles are the same. Different ways, different perspectives, different dynamics, but the human being can evolve, can change, can transform, but it's much more sustainable in an ecosystem.
Interesting. So for how long were you in the development world before? Because how I came to know about you was when you got into media. I think that's how I got to know about you. For how long were you in the development space?
Development space, maybe 6 years. Yeah, probably 6 years.
And then it was after that you jumped into media?
Media was an accident, a good accident.
Take me through that accident. So that you can get to the overall change.
I know. So some friends knew I was interested in media. A few years before that, I think I was really excited about what media can do. So then they told me, hey, there's this show, they're looking for a host. And I was like, it can't work because of my consultancy. But they said it's Sunday. I'm like, oh, cool. Because most of my consultancy is Monday to Saturday. Though the training itself would be later in the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So early in the week is more of research clients. So Sunday I was like, that's fantastic. And it's a gospel show. I'm like, ooh, let's do this. So I've never watched the show because I typically be in charge. So then I don't know, someone, I know they gave me the producer's number. I honestly can't remember. So I was calling him like, yeah, I've been told about this show. When can I come? He's like, where are you? That time I think we're doing a training at Stanley, CBD.
Also at that time you're still doing consultancy and still doing trainings?
Yes, by then I'd moved from the behavior change space. Remember I mentioned, then these principles were being requested because of the success. Would you do the same for organizations? So we started organizations. So I was doing training consultancy, and I think we're doing leadership programs every week.
So that was on an individual capacity or as part of the organization?
But then I was in consultancy.
Just as an individual?
Yes, but then I was in consultancy.
So you'd already left your development job?
Yes.
So you'd left your development job, got into consultancy, and then when this particular opportunity for getting to media came about?
Exactly. So I was still in consultancy. So at the Stanley, we're having training about weekly. So I was at CBD. So I said, I'm in CBD. They're like, okay, would you come? I'm like, come? They're like, yeah, come. But I didn't have a training that day. So I was like, okay, briefly for a meeting. So I went. So we talked. He's like, have you done this before? No. I couldn't say I've not watched the show. Thankfully, he didn't ask me. It was just a conversation because, I was not going to lie. Then he's like, okay, so he asked the director, hey, is the studio open? Could we go try something? I'm like, okay. So I go, I try something. Then I see guys coming to, I've forgotten that room. Where guys are watching what's happening. Hey,
the director's booth.
So they're like, where have you done this before? It was this whole debate. And I'm like, I've not done this before. Anyway, so they told me, okay, come tomorrow. This is Sunday. I'm like, okay, cool. I thought they want me to watch. Later on is when it's occurring to me, they want me to try.
Oh, so you are there to go live.
So notice I've called on Saturday randomly.
Yes.
They're like, come, I go. They're like, enter, I enter. They're like, come try out. So they had shortlisted, I think that like 100 people had applied. They had identified top 3. So the search was over. I didn't know.
Ah, so
but
for you
the
just...
following week is when each of the 3 shortlisted was to try a Sunday, then fans vote. So they thought, but we have a slot tomorrow, why don't we do it? Then we do the other 3. So the next day
So you're not part of the search, you just came through.
I'm not part of the search, I'm telling you. So
you're not part of the search, but you were found.
Accident that I'm deeply grateful for.
Interesting.
But I think that's the power of, when I say communication for transformation, it's all these things that built up to it, and giving credit to the journey that I'd taken to this space. So I may not have studied media. Interesting, it's my siblings who had studied media. I hadn't studied media. It wasn't really in my career plan. But I think there's something powerful about passion, about connection, and really allowing transformation to happen. So I did that show. They told me to choose a topic. So I just used the toolbox I use in consultancy, I'll be honest. So I came up with a video clip. I tried to find out the name of the DJs. Can you imagine? I didn't know.
You don't know anything.
Anyway, yeah, because I'd never watched the show. I used to be in church. So, but after that, what did I like? So before, I was not as attached to it, I'll be honest. But after the show, I loved it because we talked about forgiveness. And I think we showed a few clips about forgiveness. We did an experiential of this. Someone then do this exercise.
So primarily everything, because it was on Saturday. So on Sunday, all this that you're doing, then you just planned it on the go, or you planned it that night?
And I was thinking, what am I wearing anyway? I think it was, but that's the thing. Whenever you see someone doing something, definitely they've prepared. But there's a much longer journey of preparation than preparing for that moment.
True.
So it's not the 1 week they prepared for this talk. And that's why, as talk to executive leaders, one of the things we talk about is disruptive thinking and persuasion skills. Your persuasion skills are not for that big boardroom meeting, no. Like we have a forum for CEO from, to get the approval from the board, it's not the day you'll present to the board. It's the continuous conversation you're having with your team, with your staff. You get the stories, you get the data, you get the scenarios, and then whenever you have the conversations, then you're able to have an impact.
True.
So that's why I'm a really passionate coach, trainer for communication, that we allow transformation to take place. So I think what they liked is the engagement. So we're telling guys, do this, try this out. Call someone you haven't called in a while. Then feedback started coming in. You find someone saying, I remember some stories. There's this guy who said, I've not talked to my brother for 6 years. For the first time I've had the courage, I made the call.
Interesting.
And he told me he's coming to see me. You'd find someone saying, I'm in a matatu and I'm here in tears. They're like, you guys. So, and I'm wondering, okay, how did this happen? So then I liked it. So that's a bit of how that transition happened.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what's it called? So for how long were you in media, and what's it called? How was that experience for you? Because I'm sure you're still combining your consultancy and also media and all that stuff. How exactly was that particular period for you?
To be honest, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time in media. I am very grateful for the opportunity. It's a privilege. I'm very grateful. It's opened doors just by being a familiar face. I'm grateful for that. But the impact, as I told you, there are people you connect with, people who are in hospital, and you're just able to connect with them, have a good time. So that was good. But again, you can't be a master at everything. It's all about season. So I enjoyed that season. And my roles in consultancy were different. But we transitioned a lot more in culture transformation, a lot more in coaching. So I transitioned more from purely training to more consultancy of culture transformation, coaching, leadership academies. So much more depth was needed.
Interesting.
So I needed to have much more time and energy in that space. And then we're expecting a baby. So that was an easy transition. So when I knew my time, I was on TV for 4 years, and I loved it. I'm grateful. But I need a season, and the season shifted. And I was getting much more into family life, and the programs we're doing were much more long-term, much more in-depth, were more intense. So it needed much more focus and attention.
And as you mentioned earlier on, so you started off as an individual consultant. At what particular point, how did you decide, now let me make it a business, let me function as a business?
we have interesting stories about Delve because we started off as a business before it became a limited company.
So a business, you mean a business name?
Yeah.
All right.
So long time ago, I'll have to look at the numbers really.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah.
I just feel it's 10, 20, 30. It doesn't really matter. But what happened is, so before I'd partner with other organizations, but that what happened is seeing what works, and sustainability was the biggest thing for me. And there'd be different approaches, but then the name Delve, we're Delve training course, we go deeper.
Yeah, you delve into it.
We delve.
So let's delve into
we
this
delve
topic.
into it. I love it. So still we realized, there are a lot of interventions that are being done, but sustainability at times becomes an issue. So with consultancy, the biggest thing that shifted is ROI. When you start seeing the impact, the transformation that happens, then you get to see the value. I'll give you an example. We have non-disclosure, but when you allow us, we blow your trumpet. So we worked with Safaricom Sacco, and they're very public about this. It was a culture transformation journey. And the amazing thing to demystify culture transformation. Culture transformation is not when it's not working. It's to self-disrupt. If you look like organizations like, Koda, BlackBerry, etc., all different seasons. But the seasons where maybe they are not as successful is they did not self-disrupt.
Yes.
So transformation is not something is broken. Is you're preparing yourself for the next season. And some people prefer calling it reculturing. So reculturing is really an awareness that we've grown to this level, but we need to scale, we need to accelerate, we need to self-disrupt, otherwise we'll be disrupted. So that's what they called a sin. I'm not calling a sin because the system was broken. So we got to journey with them, and it was a very deep journey. So we got to journey with different levels of organizations, got to a culture audit, got to do different interventions. And I think after joining with them for about 2 years, they grew incredibly. Their business grew by up to 30%. They got multiple awards in the industry. The CEO got multiple awards of CEO of the Year. But that happens because of depth. It happens because of depth. So that's the passion that Delve has, is to delve in deeper, is realizing first aid saves lives. But there's more than first aid if you really want to rebuild, reinforce an ecosystem that's sustainable. So that's what consultancy is. That's what the delving is about. That's what the depth is about. And the ROI, when you see the impact that happens, and it's not just the numbers, it's the lives, the stories that are transformed. Is when employee engagement goes so much higher, is when the level of ownership is much more, when you're able to develop innovative solutions that accelerate your business, and when there's forgiveness, when people can talk more, when bosses and teams can have conversations, and guys say, I had a connect session with my boss, and for the first time I shared about some things I've carried, and I was able to just forgive. So it's not just about the numbers, about the strategy, about Q1 performance. It's playing for the long haul. And the biggest thing we say is, how can people be purpose-driven as individuals in this team? So, and it's fun while at it.
And so I think we're also just talking in terms of how Delve managed to maybe delve deeper to become a business. I had to bring that pun somewhere.
How delve deeper.
I can let's delve into this topic. But what's it called? So at that point, you're still in media. You're running it as a consultant. So I wanted just to find out in terms of that particular transition, in terms of now, how did this element come to be? How did it come to be?
How did it happen? Yes. Okay, so that's a good question. You're really taking me back to which year? What was it?
No, so just the story.
It's okay. I think the story is that it's been organic. That's the best part about it. So I think a lot of organic is not at this point, is where, for example, I left TV, that was at this point. I think in organizations, as it grows, it's very organic. It's not at which point did this happen.
So in terms of now, what's it called, building it as a business at a point now, or let me just take you back, Kidogo. At what point now did you decide, I'm done with this media journey, I want to just focus on this? Because initially you're combining both particular efforts. What exactly got you to that particular teething line? I'm now done with this part, let me just transition to the other end. So I'm very grateful because
almost 99% of our work is 100% referrals. So you find you've done work with a certain client, they like what you've done, the impact that happens, and then they refer you to the next organization. I think that's what happens. So what happened is Delve was continually growing and continually getting referrals. And as we focus more on culture, you see those are major projects. They are much more intense. It's much more demanding. So organic growth happened in Delve. So as Delve was happening and growing organically, what was happening is, the biggest reason is I got pregnant and we're expecting a baby. So the point that it happened is 3 months into the pregnancy, I said goodbye.
Said baby shark, we go baby shark.
We go baby shark. And the basis was very simple. It's family time. You know, Sunday I really felt I love going to church, and the best gift I can give my children is going to church with them. And TV is a good thing, but I'd like to just journey with them. That's it. And I wanted to safeguard that. Definitely, there's family time, whether it's in the evenings and consultancy, definitely. And running a business, you choose your time. But a big thing was, for me, Sunday's family time. And I want my children to grow up with memories of we go to church together. Where in the morning, I'm not prepping for the show. In the morning, and that's what we do now. We love preparing something. Every Sunday we bake. Either we're doing pizza or we're baking a cake and imagine that's what means the world to me. So Sunday mornings is our day for. So we bake something. Thankfully our service is 12 o'clock. So we sleep
just before lunch.
I know. Okay, there's no sleeping in entirely because they're up at like 6 consistently. So you wake up early, you know, do something, whether it's pizza or we bake a cake, but every Sunday we prepare something fun. Then
it's a culture you've already done.
It's a culture, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to create memories just with them, and it's just us. And Sundays is family, and we go to church together because my faith is a big thing, and they get to choose their own journey. But I love the values that are entrenched, and some things are caught, not taught. That's the other thing, and that's why I also Delve go deep, because the biggest transformation is with the leaders, and with the leaders it's role modeling. It's not what they say to their teams, it's how they journey with them. It was just that. So the biggest reason I left TV is I wanted to be there with my family on Sunday.
Interesting.
So that was the point, and it wasn't a hard decision. It wasn't a struggle. So if they didn't come, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe it would have happened a bit later. Maybe. Definitely I would have transitioned. But basically, it's the more and more the business, the consultancy grew, it was definitely time something will give. But something I'm grateful for. Remember, it was a Sunday show.
So at least,
So it was Sunday. So I'd only go to the media house
on Sunday.
And but there's a lot of support I had. I had a fantastic PA. I had a fantastic team. So we do research, but it was Sunday, and I'd be done by 1 or something.
Interesting. And before you go on a break, there's something that you mentioned quite early on that's very, very important. The aspect of seasons. And knowing when is your season, maybe for your business transition, for you to transition in terms of your career. From your experience, how do you know it's a particular season for you, or maybe for any entrepreneur, when it's your season either to exit maybe from employment into business, or your season to exit maybe from business to from business to employment? What's your tip for understanding, or your understanding of seasons?
It's complex. It's very complex, but I feel what's the priority in this season? And the priority in this season, in the next season, it won't have the same value. When you're 70, what will you think of the best thing you'd have done in your 20s, in your 30s, when you remove yourself from that situation? So, and that's why for me, when I was projecting, I wanted, when my children are thinking of their first year, second year, third year, fifth year, seventh year, I wanted a big part of their memories is Sunday with mom. So I knew it's great to take care of everyone else. It's great to be on TV. It's great to make an impact spiritually, you know. But I knew my priority for that was my kids and the people who work on Sunday, which is fine. But based on my ecosystem, but also priority of where is your most impact. As you meet people in training, a lot of times they tell me, after this session, I don't wonder why you're not on TV anymore, because that's the greatest impact. And there are people who their greatest impact is on screen. So I feel there are different things we can do, but then different seasons you get to know your priorities, but then where's your greatest impact? Not just what you're good at, because you could be good at two things. What are my best start, then you prioritize where you have the most impact. Because honestly, we got 7 awards or something, or 4 awards, I can't remember. Yeah. So we had a lot of awards in that in terms of impact. Coming full circle, do you know there are clients who've awarded us because of impact in the organization? That blows me away. It's just hit me. You can actually get awards this side of life. It's never been an issue. It's just hit me now. But if we're to measure awards, my consultancy didn't have awards.
But had impact. My goodness.
Unbelievably so. So know your priority in every season. Priority was the kids. And impact. Impact was definitely the impact we're having in consultancy. I'll be honest, we keep saying with our team, it doesn't make sense. And I could share some stories.
Interesting.
Even for us, it baffles us.
Interesting. So we'll take a short commercial break and then we'll be back and just continue delving into this particular conversation. So I'll see you after the break. And I'll welcome back to the show. Before we went on a break, Faith was just taking us through her faithful journey and at different particular transitions as to how exactly she got into Delve, how exactly she transitioned from media. And this particular juncture, I want us to just go into one of the core things you've measured on in terms of as Delve, the aspect of cultural transformation. And you're talking about the aspect of self-disrupting yourself. We talked briefly about organizations such as Kodak who failed to self-destruct, and then they eventually got to to literally distract, and fail. This is a key issue that you're facing right now. The aspect of maybe big companies coming to their, to their knees because of failure to self-destruct. Having been, core to several organizations self-destruct, at what point should an organization choose to self-destruct?
Okay.
And how important is it, first of all?
I love that. So if you don't self-disrupt, you'll start declining. And extinction becomes a reality because an organization is a living mechanism. So you're either growing or you're degenerating. There are no two ways about it. So I'll talk of different ways it's time to self-disrupt. A very unique one, and this one is more visible and more tangible. And tangible, not touch, but you can really put a finger to it, is milestone years.
Milestone years.
So something you have fun with in our team, as organizations call us and tell us, here's what we're going through, and we've not really found out how long have you existed. But then as they discuss, interestingly at some point, and I don't know when it happens, we haven't put a finger to it, but there's certain patterns we've identified, and a lot of times we'll ask, how many years has it been? And guess what maturity tell us? We're turning 15 this year. We just turned 20. A significant percentage, I'd almost say 80%, are in milestone years.
What do you mean by milestone years?
Milestone years, they're turning 10. They're turning 15, especially turning 20, 25. You see, those are milestone years. The same way even for your birthday. 20 is a big deal, 30 is a big deal, 40, 50. And what we noticed is in those milestone years, there's a discontent, especially with employees. So there are three things. So that one is milestone years. Alongside milestone years, and at times not necessarily, is employee dissatisfaction. So you find employees are dissatisfied and the leaders are wondering, what do these people want? We've given them good packages. We've done all sorts of interventions. What do they want? And we see a lot of times it's like a teenager. So a teenager is no longer an adolescent, or even an adolescent. At times it's an adolescent. They're no longer a child. They're getting into adolescence. So there's a turmoil within them, and they need to evolve. They need to evolve into high responsibility. Same thing to teenager. Same thing to 18, transitioning to 20. You get? So they are discontent because they're ready for more. They're ready for more responsibility. They're ready for more challenge. They're ready for more respect, they're ready for more freedom, they're ready for more.
So it comes, the discontent, or maybe that particular element of disruption comes from the employees themselves. That's triggering.
Employees, exactly. And at times, the employees don't even know what the problem is. Same as, at times, teenagers don't know what the problem is. At times, adolescents don't know what the problem is. You'd even hear in, for example, some high schools, there are certain years that are just transition years. Interestingly, even with COVID, COVID transition years, a lot of schools are trying to still manage it. For example, children who joined school in COVID, children who joined grade 1 in COVID, children, depending on what system you're in, whether it was checkpoint or CBC, the ones who were going through a transition during COVID, schools have had significant challenges with transition years. What's happening? We are ready for the next thing. But is the organization ready? And are we ready? So a lot of times it's almost a rite of passage.
Interesting.
Almost. But then if you look at the traditional African society, there was a lot of reskilling. There was a lot of retooling. There was a lot of what does the next season entail? What does the next level of responsibility entail? So one is milestone years, we've talked about it. 2, how do you know you're ready for culture transformation or reculturing? Because at times it's not entire transformation, it's just reculturing or culture redefining. You already have your culture bit, you're redefining. Another is clients. When your partners, when your stakeholders, because you also work a whole lot with the development world, when you find a lot of your partners and your stakeholders are discontent, and at times the complaints don't really add up. You know, like their teenagers banging the bed, you're like, is it the tea that they're not happy about? So the level of discontent doesn't match with whatever the complaints are. Or even when you address the complaints, you don't seem to be addressing the underlying issue. So a lot of times it's discontent from your stakeholders, and here's what we say. The same way your teenager is going through their own issues, now their parents going through training, retooling, coaching of how do you parent a teenager. And it's not the teenager who's transitioning, you need to change your parenting
to accommodate,
to parent the teen. You can't parent the teen the way you parent the adolescents, the way you parented the toddler.
Interesting.
So the parent needs to evolve into being a parent of the teenager. Same thing to the clients. Your clients have changed, your clients have evolved, your clients have different needs. So have you evolved to meet their need? So you have to self-destruct. You have to say, I'm no longer a parent of a teenager, I'm no longer a parent of a toddler. My employees have shifted in their needs. Another thing is just generations. We are now having Gen Z in the workplace, and a lot of leaders are struggling. So you can't wish a generation away. You can't. You can't
say Z.
You can't.
You got it.
You can't say Z to Gen Z. Trust you, Whether you guys, that's like strike 6. You're really good at it, by the way. You know, I'm still hung up on that one.
Dad jokes. So I'm parenting. I'm parenting my jokes.
I know. And we love parenting scenarios because it's safe. When we talk about family, family is on principles. You can't deny it. You know, the same way if we say the organization is going to another season, guys are like, what do you mean by different season? But when you say, when you're dealing with a teenager, guys are like, like they know it. It's not, they know it. They know it's true. So, I think you can't wish a generation away. So how do you self-disrupt into a leader who's able to lead a Gen Z generation, knowing in Africa that's the majority of your client base. So even simply as knowing if most of our clients are coming from our Gen Z, it means in 15 years we are out of business, not declining.
Out of business.
Out of business. If our staff who are giving us the hardest time are Gen Z,
so the client's going to be harder.
It means we are done. Even our own employees. So we say the 3 things that help you in your culture transformation renewal. Employee, you have to be best fit for your employee based on their needs. And now we're in the purpose generation. So if you're not a purposeful leader, you will not lead your teams, because intrinsic motivation for this generation, and millennials included, is purpose generation. So you have to be, to self-disrupt, to be relevant to your employees, to self-disrupt, to be relevant to your clients, your stakeholders, your partners, but also to be future ready.
Interesting. And there's something that when you're mentioning about it is also the aspect of cultural transformation. So besides the disruption, I think even in my book I talk about it. As a quote I talk about, what's it called? An entrepreneur is the ground zero for any particular culture in any organization.
Yeah.
So culture is such an important aspect, but sometimes I think everybody wants to wish it away. But how can an entrepreneur probably watching this, or maybe any particular business leader watching this, how can he inculcate a culture that's actually enabled this aspect of transformation? Because I think also it comes from culture.
Yeah. For a leader, you need to go through self-disruption. You need to go through self-disruption. You need to listen to the feedback around you. You need to look at the patterns that are happening and know that you're a big part of the problem and the solution. But also you need to realize that you're part of an ecosystem. That, you know, if you're the CEO, culture rises and falls with the CEO, no doubt about it. But as in any government, a lot of times the cabinet have a huge role they play. So as you go through your self-disruption, are you journeying alongside your exco, your HODs, your directors, also boards? One of the things we've noticed, the greatest transformation we've seen in culture, so a lot of times, and a lot of studies have shown on the transformation of the CEO and the executive leadership team, or the country lead, for example, in the development world. But in organizations that have boards, especially boards of directors, not just that,
you have to get them on board.
The most transformation we've seen is boards. And guess what? Whenever we have, for example, forums for board leaders, and even when we have this forum called the Leadership Forum, so we have CEOs, CFOs, HRs, and board members coming together. We also have CEO Forum. But a lot of times you hear people talking about transformational CEOs. You hear that a lot. You even hear transformational HODs, where there's a HOD who transforms their unit to a great extent. But rarely will you hear a transformational board.
Yes, hardly.
Rarely.
Yeah, it's usually the CEO that you hear about, a transformational CEO.
Exactly. But now we're getting to a space of realizing the biggest acceleration we've seen in culture transformation. Acceleration is in an organic sense. So let me say the most effective. Let me say effective. You know, accelerated is, you know, a spanner. Is where boards are transformational. So now we're getting to a place of, is this board self-disrupting? So by the end of the day, we say there's self-leadership, team leadership, organization leadership. The ultimate leadership is self-leadership, but self-leadership within an ecosystem that's transforming. So that's what we say when all is said and done. And when we do culture audits, one of the things that people value about the approach we take, we deal with some of the most advanced tools in the world, and we look at an ecosystem that will help you. The same ecosystem measuring your culture is the same ecosystem measuring your leadership, is the same ecosystem measuring self. So you have an ecosystem that helps you measure the organization culture, the collective leadership,
and the individual.
To the lowest level of the organization, whatever that one would be. So the interesting thing is a lot of the ecosystem results from the culture audit, the similarities for the whole organization culture is very similar to the CEO.
Interesting.
But something we've noticed, a lot of times the CEO is influenced significantly by the board. But ultimately, if you put the organization culture results and the exco results, or the executive leadership team and the board, they're very similar. But if you separate other departments, then they're very different. So that's why, and each of those, if you look at self, you look at the board chair, if you look at the CEO, but depends on the period of time. They have to there for at least about 3 years. Less than 3 years, they'll be very different. But around 3 years, you start seeing alignment. So if culture is getting worse, you see there both getting worse individually and collectively.
Interesting. We always often hear about this particular term, a toxic work environment, a toxic culture. So toxic is such a word that's constantly used, especially I think Gen Z are quite wary of this. If they see something toxic, they walk away from it with no excuses. I think millennials and other ones, we can actually just bear the brunt. But how can one transform a toxic work environment? I think that's a key thing and how can you transform it? Because maybe you walk into some organization, it's completely toxic. How can it be transformed? Is it just getting the person on the head, or how can one transform a toxic work environment?
That's a session just purely in and of itself.
Let's get rid of the toxins.
The best thing you have is the people you have.
Yes.
The best team you have is the people you have. So there's always value from getting different people. But and many leaders will tell you, we got new people, but it's only a matter of time when the new people become like
the old people. Ones. Yes.
I'll give an example. If you have a friend who they had many children, you know those families where we had 12 children, we had
the 12 disciples.
Or a soccer team. Soccer team. And you ask them, all of you guys turned out very well. You notice the parents created an ecosystem. They'll tell you the last one was hardly touched, in terms of discipline or something. Because the parents, what they focused on was building an ecosystem. Yeah. That's what matters. So when we say, so it's not adopting new children. That will help your fifth. So you don't adopt a firstborn and a lastborn to get better children. The children you have are the children you have. Just to address that issue of do we fire? So there's a place. So one of the things we say is your highest performers, and highest performers is holistic performance, not just they're meeting their numbers. Are they engaging well with their colleagues? Are they engaging well with stakeholders? Are they future ready? That's high performers. Because at times you have people who are bringing the numbers, but they're not connecting well with other people. So it's not sustainable. So to answer your question of do we let go of all the toxic people, whatever that may be, that's not sustainable. You can't. That's not sustainable. There is a place of letting go, but that's not. The aim is to develop an ecosystem. And that's what I'm saying. If a parent has 10 children, they're concerned about certain children. The solution is not to adopt good kids. The solution is rework the ecosystem. Psychology says in family therapy, I love psychology, is when you see a black sheep, the black sheep is a reflection of the family and a reflection of the parents. So when the child goes for therapy, a lot of times the therapist will invite them both, and the parents get to see that child is a reflection of their dysfunction. Nonetheless, when we say organizations are toxic, there are different perspectives to it. One is the organizations that just have systemic issues. Year in, year out. That is there. But most organizations, it's seasons. Most organizations, it's seasons.
What do you mean by seasons?
If you think about it, there's probably a time in your life from the family you grew up in, you and your parents were not seeing eye to eye, and things were bad. If people are married, you hear people saying this season was, people will be married 40 years, they'll tell you this season was bad. We never thought we'd make it.
It's like a season finale.
My kids love soccer, but I think they really enjoy this one. This one they'll enjoy. So now
I'm confusing you. The point about you're talking about the black sheep in the family and the seasons.
Yes. So about toxic organizations. So one, the organizations who year in, year out, things are just not healthy. Same thing to relationships. Same thing to families, dysfunctional. But every family has a dysfunction. And every relationship has a season where they're not functioning as they should be. So I'll talk about that, which is a season. So many organizations have their ups and downs, but there's some seasons that things are really bad. So what do I say? It's a season to self-disrupt. The same way, if you look at statistics for marriage, if you look at statistics for example, when people are really struggling with their parents, it's transition seasons. It's when kids are becoming teenagers. Some, it's extremely volatile, but it's the teenage season. Some, they say marriage, there's some milestone years, at times the first year, at times the seventh year, but even statistics show. Now, in that season, was the marriage toxic? So a lot of times that's what people call toxic. I'd rather not use that. Probably it's not as healthy as it should be, because you don't want to make it an identity. So I'll repeat that. If you feel an environment is toxic, you may want to be more careful not to define it. It may not have been its identity. It may have been a season. For example, if a teenager is fighting with the parents, is that a toxic family?
No.
I'm not sure. Maybe, maybe not. But if it's just that season, it's a season, and you maybe don't want to call it, to label it toxic. It's an unhealthy season. What is it calling for? Self-disrupting. The same way, the volatile season of teenagehood.
Yeah.
And there are families that go through teenagehood seasons very effectively. I'll say effectively because it's still bumpy.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be volatile, which means the emotions may be volatile, the hormones will be volatile, but you can have the same way when if a sea is in a storm, there's a way the ship can ride the waves even in the storm. So what am I saying? Is it a toxic environment? Is it a season? So how do you self-disrupt? Because the storms will be there. And now the storms are more because we're in a volatile environment.
True. So
the storms are more. So people keep saying it's toxic, but it's a season.
It's a season,
The same way nowadays, adolescence is coming earlier.
Yeah.
You know how it goes. So you feel like we're in adolescence, then we're in preteen, then we're in teen, then
but it's a season.
parents are like, how many things are this?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. So a lot of times people call toxic, but it's
a season.
At times it's the season. How do we self-disrupt in this season collectively, including employees? So we say everything rises and falls with leadership, but what we like about the access system we use, we actually help even the employees, the staff look into the mirror and see the correlations. I'll give an example of family again. When you look at family, especially when it's adults and their parents, the parents are still the parents, but notice the children now play a big role. So when staff are in an organization, we'll just use, and I use that because family is relatable for everyone.
True.
When your adult children, as much as your parents have some things they're doing that are not right, you're adults, my friend. You're adults.
Yeah.
So you have a great way you influence. So that's what we say in the organization. Everything rises and falls under leadership. Hands down.
Interesting.
But thankfully in this family setting, you're not children.
Yeah.
You're adults. So you can step up. The same way are the leaders who determine how the country goes, or is it the people who accept certain things from leaders? And when the people choose, this is where we are going, there is an impact with that. Is that helpful?
Very, very helpful.
Yeah, so toxic, is it a season? And if it feels like a toxic season, I'd rather call it an unhealthy season. It's a good sign because it's showing you need to evolve.
Interesting.
So take the hints and choose to evolve.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, time just literally flies so fast. So we have like, what's it called? In like a minute, I have 10 questions for just quick fire questions. So whatever comes to your mind.
Okay.
So at least now you're out of the toxic season. You're now in a familiar season. So the first question, what's the greatest risk you've ever taken?
Oh my goodness.
Whatever comes to your mind.
Traveling out of the country at a young age.
No, interesting. Which is your favorite word?
It is well.
With your soul.
Those are 3 words. Yeah,
it's a lot.
Neema, I keep saying that. It's grace. Grace.
Describe your style in 1 word, since you decided to change your wardrobe before the show.
Agile.
What are you most afraid of as a child?
A robbery.
What item is worth spending more money on?
Experiences.
What is your
not
hidden
items.
What is your hidden talent?
Planning.
Money or happiness?
Happiness.
Are you a thinker or a doer?
Both. You have to think and do. You don't do without thinking.
But some people do without thinking.
Do as you think. And then think what you did. You did both in life, my friend.
And the final question, what do you think the meaning of life is?
Purpose.
Wow, interesting. I've really enjoyed this particular conversation with Faith Muturi, who's the managing director of Delve. Managing partner of Delve. And primarily they're very big on organizational transformation, cultural transformation, and they actually transform companies to become what they're supposed to be by self-destruction. Hope I've actually described it quite right.
We support companies to self-destruct. We don't transform them.
You help them.
We create an ecosystem and support them as they do it. Yeah.
Interesting. My goodness. I've really enjoyed this particular conversation. I feel like time imeenda haraka. We need a part 2.
Awesome.
So we should actually do this. I've really enjoyed this conversation. As always, I'm just reminding you on the 25th of April, we're doing the Business Conquest Masterclass with Michael Joseph at Nairobi Cinema. Hope to see you all. You can get your tickets on madfund.com. And also, of course, as always, we're here courtesy of the Capital Club, so we're quite appreciative of them. And if you're an entrepreneur and you want to just be a part of this particular environment, ecosystem of entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs and persons in the C-suite, join the Capital Club. Until next time, I'll see you right here on the Late Night Business on KTN Home. My name is Ian Dennis. See you next time.